I'd like to say hello to Fred Maglione and welcome him to our little discussion here with Softjourn. And if he could please give a little introduction. He's been in the industry a long time and he'll do by far better job than I will.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm happy to be here. You're right. I have been in this business a long time, almost 45 years, working in pro sports, working for a number of, all sell goods and services to the live entertainment industry, whether it's sports, concerts, theater, theme parks, you name it. I've been involved with everything from the launch of computerized ticketing to the launch of buying tickets via the internet, when people looked at you like you had two heads and said, "What's the internet?" So varied background.
In your opinion, how has ticketing evolved in, the last few years, say 5 or so? And what do you think are the biggest game changers?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say game changers, but one of the things that I think is a common thread in our industry is that as technology has evolved, other industries have embraced it before the live entertainment industry and the ticketing industry has. And really what drives the ticket industry is not being innovative, it's the live business, the live event, the promoters, the content owners, they drive us to make changes. So for example, the ticket, if you think about the ticket, as we know it today, it's gradually going away. Now, that's to the chagrin of a lot of sentimentalists that love to have ticket stubs and put them in their scrapbook after a concert or a sporting event. But the reality is the content owner has always wanted to know who's in the building, not just who bought the ticket. And now the technology allows us to do that. The advent of digital tickets just makes a whole lot of sense for our industry. And I think you'll see more and more of that, where the physical ticket goes away and the digital ticket takes over. The other, I think, real significant change is the concept of openness. Content owners want to sell their tickets. They want to sell as many tickets as they possibly can, and they want to gather more information. So finally, we're seeing ticketing systems, and we're seeing the contracts between the content owner and the ticketing company allow more openness, the ability to have tickets available through lots of different sales channels. You're seeing Ticketmaster embrace it today. You can buy Ticketmaster tickets on Groupon, Bands in Town, Facebook, Broadway.com. SeatGeek has made a couple announcements. Lots of vendors now are embracing the concept of openness and allowing their tickets to be sold wherever they possibly be sold. And I think the last big change is pricing. And again, it's the content owners driving this. They're starting to realize that the product that they have, whether it's a concert, a sporting event, you name it, the value of that event can vary based on the seat location in the venue, the time of week, the time of the year. So we talk about dynamic pricing. I'm not sure it's always dynamic pricing, but just the ability to quickly, easily, and electronically prices based on demand and based on consumer sentiment. We're seeing a lot more of that. And there's a lot of talk about the secondary market, but the reality is that the content owners are starting to embrace higher prices, lower prices, different pricing concepts than they have in the past. And our technology has to embrace that.
Are ticketing companies being required by content owners now to become open and offer APIs to anybody who wants to be able to sell those tickets?
Absolutely. It's now a requirement. Look, 10 years ago, I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. The iPhone came out June 29th, 2007. App Store opened July 10th, 2008. So prior to that, the concept of doing things on your phone, social media, it wasn't that well embraced. Today, it's so common. So content owners are talking to their customers and their potential customers via all forms of social media, all forms of apps. And if they're talking to them, why aren't they also selling their goods and services? So it just makes complete sense. And the companies have to embrace this technology.
So are there advantages for the ticketing companies to become open and provide these APIs? As opposed to being closed? They were primarily closed before. So do you see advantages to being open?
I do. Most ticketing companies have a transaction-based model. If they're smart and they're monetizing their product properly, it's to their advantage as well as their client's advantage to sell as many tickets as possible. And it just becomes a bigger pie. So maybe everybody gets a smaller piece per transaction, but there's lots more transactions. Good for everybody.
So another follow-on, we were talking about pricing. That includes like dynamic pricing or different pricing for different venues or time of day or demand or no demand. So how do you think that is working or changing ticketing service providers?
It's certainly changing slowly. Content owners have been slow to embrace the idea of pricing their product properly. You know, Bruce Springsteen, for example, likes to keep his tickets under $100. He's been notorious to try to do that. Mm-hmm. But the reality is when he's playing a 15,000 seat venue and 50,000 people in that city want to go to that show, that product is worth more than what he's pricing it at. So, and that's the secondary market. So I think the promoters, particularly in music, and the artists themselves are starting to gradually understand the value of pricing their product properly. This is going to become a real challenge for a lot of ticketing companies because there are so many different ways to do it. Baseball, for example. Baseball team, you're setting your prices in the winter for games that you're going to be playing in August and September. Mm-hmm. And so you have an opponent X that's coming to your ballpark on Saturday night. It's a hot team. It was this past season, so you're assuming it's going to be a hot team this coming season. So you price it accordingly. Now you get closer to the event and you realize two of the star players are injured. The team's got a losing record. The demand isn't going to be there. You need to be able to react quickly. So there are all kinds of issues like that, whether, you may price it in a certain way and it's an outdoor event, and then the day of the event, the weather forecast is horrible. The technology has to be able to react. So I think there's some real challenges for the ticketing companies in that regard.
How do you think consumers are going to react to dynamic or changing prices?
Slowly.
Slowly?
I really think slowly. I still see consumers on airplanes that get upset if they paid 40% more than the person sitting next to them and they find that out. So I think consumers will accept it gradually. I'll tell you what, it's probably a controversial statement, but I think companies like StubHub have really helped this. I think more and more now you're seeing consumers go to StubHub.com, SeatGeek.com, Viagogo, these secondary markets first to see what the market value is. What's the market price, the going rate for these events before people go by. I think consumers are going to accept it, and I think it's just going to be a learning process, just like everything else has been.
Interesting. All right, thank you. One of the other technology areas that seems to be hot in many areas, but is also being applied to ticketing, is blockchain. So what's your thoughts on, is it going to revolutionize ticketing? Is it going to change the world of ticketing as we know it with, many new users of blockchain claim? What's your thought?
None of the above. I believe that it's very interesting technology, obviously, and needs to be watched closely, but there's still a lot of question marks around it. There are a lot of companies investing a lot of money in it right now. And I think like any other new technology, it probably will not be mainstream live entertainment that takes advantage of it first. We'll have to see it proven and strong in some other area. I mean, if you think about some of the other revolutionary technologies, I'm old enough in this business that I used to walk into buildings and say, we can now process your order over with a credit card. And they would look at me like I was crazy. You had to sell a ticket with cash. So I think we'll see blockchain technology, but I think we'll see it gradually. There's still a lot of question marks, volume issues, scalability issues that I think need to be resolved. The technology just needs to mature. But conceptually, it does make sense. But is it ready for our business? Well, I don't think it is right.
Is there any other technology that you see at this time that could make a big impact in, ticketing?
Other than some of the things we've talked about already, I think we're looking at different ways to pay for a ticket. Certainly, the digitization of a ticket, if that's a word, is going to continue to evolve. What is, I think, going to change our business dramatically is security. As the world continues to get more dangerous, venue operators and event organizers are going to be hard pressed to keep their audience secure. And I think there's going to be technology that's going to affect that. Obviously, we're talking about facial recognition and some other things along those lines, but I think security is going to force us to change things dramatically.
Kind of along the lines of security is also data protection. So obviously in Europe, we now have GDPR, which has been put into place. Do you have any thoughts or concerns or ideas about the impact that is having on the industry?
Well, I think GDPR, like every industry, is making everyone rethink how they gather data, secure data, and market their constituents. So I think it's going to put more handcuffs around the software vendors to build security into their product. It's going to be a pretty big challenge for a lot of these software companies, these ticketing companies, to meet the requirements as they continue to evolve. And I think GDPR is just the beginning. I think we're going to see more and more strict demands put on it. I think it'll be the Facebooks and the Googles that are suffer through it first, but it'll trickle down to all the vendors.
Do you think GDPR, do you think it's a step too far? Do you think it's a step not far enough? What's your thought?
I really haven't given it any thought. That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. No, I don't think it's a step too far. I think we as consumers should be protected in some regards as we're giving our information constantly. So I don't think it's a step too far, no.
Okay. One of the other topics that you mentioned, one of the other answers was payments and types of payment. You had mentioned, that once upon a time it was cash only. Once upon a time it was, if you wanted a ticket, you had to go to the box office. You could make a phone call and send a check. Obviously, the payment industry is being chained to by, mobile phone technology and things like that. So what do you see in ticketing now?
Ticketing is going to have to follow the trends. I can tell you, as a consumer now, I use an Android phone and I want to use my Google Wallet everywhere. I don't want to pull a credit card or cash out of my pocket. I just want to tap my phone. So, and I think we're just going to see more and more of that. The digitization of payments, just like of tickets. The industry is going to have to embrace it. We're going to have to accept every new form of payment that comes down the pike, and they're coming rapidly.
How about virtual currency? Any use of that as far as payment?
No. I mean, virtual currencies are so volatile right now. I'm not going to sell a ticket, $100 tickets that tomorrow that payment may only be worth $20. I'm not going to take that risk as a promoter. There are some promoters that are willing to take that risk, but
right. I don't have a problem with that answer. I see that as definitely an issue too. What is the one or two changes, trends that you see ticketing service provider, vendors have to look at to remain competitive?
Jeff, they're going to have to look at everything we've talked about, the evolving ticket, security, blockchain. There are so many technologies that are rapidly appearing, and that's one of the big challenges for a lot of ticketing companies because it's such a balancing act. They have to focus on their core technology that they're operating today, and they have to look down the road at what's coming and what their clients might demand in the future. We don't know what's going to be available in the future. Technology is evolving at a faster rate than any other time in our history. So it's become such a balancing act for some of these smaller firms to be able to focus on the new versus on what they need to worry about today.
All right. Thank you.